Batman Turcos, the archivist here at the University of Maryland. With a combined passion for history and sports, I have the perfect job. In October of 1957, royalty came to the United States. Queen Elizabeth and Prince Philip of England made a trip to our nation's capital. This was their schedule in 1957. If you look in the lower corner, wait, we'll zoom in for you. In between the White House luncheon at 12:30 and at 8 o'clock state dinner, the royal couple attended a football game here in College Park, Maryland, between North Carolina and the University of Maryland. So how did this all happen? Well, the Queen showed an interest in seeing an American football game, and the U.S. State Department asked the university to invite her. So we did. So on August 6, 1957, University of Maryland President Wilson Elkins wrote to Maryland Governor Theodore McKeldin asking him to invite the Queen to the game. Then Governor McKeldin wrote this letter to the British Embassy inviting the Queen. 2 days later, the Queen accepted the invitation. So that's how the royal couple ended up at a football game here at the University of Maryland.
Used words that a lot of people must have used. It was a big deal. When the Queen of England comes, it's a big thing.
The fact that, she was here and did get around. I think everybody was surprised that a queen would want to go to, a college football game.
Probably the first thing I remember was the excitement, the anticipation of a queen coming to Maryland. And I'm thinking, why would she come to the University of Maryland?
In the 50s, although we're in close proximity to the Washington area and the President of the United States, wasn't often that royalty came. And the royalty was coming to our campus to watch a football game.
We saw in a sports page probably that the Queen was coming. I actually went downtown and bought a suit. Now in those days, you did not buy clothes haphazardly for any reason. You had 3 pair of underpants and you washed one every night, and 2 brassieres and you washed one every other day. And everybody had 3, 4 kids, dog, in a 900 square foot house, but everybody enjoyed we thought we were rich, 1 car, but you just didn't buy clothes for any special occasion. We were beautiful. My mother even wore a capelet, it was called, of squirrel, gray squirrel.
And everyone, including the people who consider themselves in big jobs like the president, was concerned that it be done properly. They even rehearsed where everyone was going to sit down in the stadium, the guests and the Queen.
Here are some of the scrapbooks that my mother put together. As you can see, they're a little warped. In 1954, my father was hired by the University of Maryland to become president of the university, and we were coming from El Paso, Texas, where he had been president of Texas Western College, which is now University of Texas at El Paso.
Dr. Elkins set up a protocol committee, and I was on the committee as a student representative, and we met maybe 5-6 times every 2 weeks with State Department people, faculty people, and we had to reach big decisions, such as where should she sit? And we decided at the meetings that she should sit on the North Carolina side. Back in the 50s, the Maryland students were well known for drinking a lot of beer and maybe some vodka.
Sometimes immaturity and alcohol don't mix well, so the school had a real concern with what happened in the stadium.
We decided we didn't want to have any problems, so between the card section, being able to see the card section, and making sure that nobody had any problems, we thought that was a better bet.
This is the program on game day, a sentimental souvenir. This is the game day ticket, also a sentimental souvenir. But to some of the players, well, this gave them a chance to clean up.
And this is from Coach Mont. As Dear Terps, we will be allowed the usual number of tickets according to your years on the squad. We were allowed 4 tickets for free each game. And if you didn't have a need for them, then they would give you the money that the tickets cost. I think the tickets are around $4 something a piece. I'm not sure of that anymore, but that was pretty big money for us at the time because we were getting $15 a month laundry money. $15 a month didn't last very long. There's $16 for a week. That was great.
Let's go!
This is football practice at the University of Maryland. This is the head coach, Ralph Friedgen. No one comes in or out of practice unless he says so no one can spy on Coach Friedgen's upcoming game strategies. But in 1957, Maryland practices were witnessed daily by prying eyes.
One day out on the practice field, I noticed some strange-looking guys up around the stadium, and I wondered, what are these fellows doing up there? And they don't look like our crowd. And so I sent the manager up, or one of the fellows, you know, and here that was the British Secret Service that was up there getting ready.
Week before, we had FBI people all over the place, and we didn't realize how big a deal it was having such a celebrity like the Queen come to the game.
Student body president Howard Miller had another dilemma. He was going to be in the Queen's seating area during the game, and he needed a date.
I needed to take a date to the football game so that it dawned on me maybe I should find somebody special out of the ordinary to take to the game. So I picked up the phone and called information in Denver, Colorado, and asked for the phone number for Marilyn Van Derber. Marilyn Van Derber was Miss America from 1957. I got through to her number, got her business agent, explained who I was, what was happening, the Queen was coming to the football game, and the business agent was really upset because she had a previous commitment to go to some festival someplace, so he had to turn me down. But it was not unusual, because many times prospective dates would turn me down. So that then we decided, well, we need to get somebody a little more local. I called Lynn. It was Lynn Needle. Not seriously, but on and off we had dated, so I thought that would be a great pick to take to the Queen's game.
I knew he was president of the school, and all the co-eds were running after Howard. Of course, Howard had told me I was not to mention a word to anyone about it. And that was pretty hard for me.
As we approached the game, the secret about who I was dating no longer was a secret.
When I arrived in Baltimore by train a couple nights before, the cameramen were waiting at the station, and the cameramen seemed to trail me everywhere I went for the next 2 days.
What does the girl's hairdo look like who's going to meet the Queen? I think there was even a beauty shop advertisement.
And I felt badly for Howard, because he was the president. I was simply the honored guest. I think Howard was a little put off. He said no one was following him.
Not everyone wanted to participate in this royal day. Carol Elkins, the daughter of Maryland President Wilson Elkins, had much bigger plans than meeting the Queen of England.
I was a cheerleader at the local high school, and we were having a big game that day, and I was told I had to go to this game at the university. What? No. No. Why do I have to go? Why do I have to go to that? And I don't know how many days that went on, and even that day, my sister says she remembers me just being totally upset that I had to miss that football game.
I remember my sister not wanting to putting up a little fuss before she was forced to leave the house and not go to her own game.
Sometimes lunch at the university can become the same day after day. But on this special occasion, President Wilson Elkins and his wife Dorothy hosted a luncheon at the President's house before the game.
I remember that day as being very electric. The house was bustling. They come in the front door, and I don't know, he must be telling them what time we go out, what limousine you take. These were people coming in to lunch. But it was just excitement. You know, the fact that who goes in what limousine and who sits where, and so everybody just being very looking forward to this day. Of course, I wasn't very excited. Pouting, but I was there, you know. I did get dressed up in my little suit that I had to go buy, and my little white beret that my mother, I think, there was a big shopping trip for that, because we went to Garfinkel's downtown and, you know, got to buy new suits, which I didn't want to do either.
And here's the big day. thrill of a lifetime. Finally, Howard picked me up, and out we marched, and we went to the University of Maryland, the limos, into the stadium. I was too young to fully understand it, but it was phenomenal. She had on a pink suit that was magnificent, and her little pillbox hat.
She was very queenly, I thought, in appearance.
She was one of the most beautiful women I ever saw.
She was beautiful. Her skin was gorgeous.
And of course there was her new mink coat, absolutely gorgeous. She was lovely.
I had this wonderful vision of the Queen of England with big satin hoop skirts and a crown, bejeweled crown. Maybe I guess I was 10 at the time of that game. You get up there and there's this very dignified lady who's wearing what I'm sure was a lovely outfit. That can't possibly be the Queen of England. This is ridiculous. She doesn't have any of the trappings of royalty that you'd come to expect from your elementary school history books.
Royal etiquette was what we were allowed to do and what we were not allowed to do when we were around the Queen. And one is you were not to speak to her unless she spoke to you.
Well, we did a welcoming cheer and going over with the other girls to present her with a flower. We had to curtsy. That was something in my day you didn't do. You had to learn how to curtsy.
We got a hello and a curtsy and shake hands, but she was she was very attractive.
There I am, yeah. This must have just been a greeting before and then sitting down. It's weird. It's really weird because you're not like seeing yourself. You're seeing, I remember it and I remember being there, but it's very strange.
The usual routine was to be at the stadium at 12:30, and I was driving a university car up University Lane, and I got to the gate to get down to the stadium, and there was a big burly state trooper there, and he said, "Whoa." So I said, well, I'm the coach. He said, "Sir, I don't care who you are." He said, "You're not going down there." He said, "Because the Queen will come that way." So I didn't know what to do. The traffic was heavy, so I pulled up on a curb and found a grassy spot and just got out of the car and left it there and walked down to the stadium.
Of all the security surrounding the Queen on the big day, nothing proved more invasive than the encounter running back Jim Joyce had with the men of the Secret Service.
For a game, when you have your ankles taped and you don't have very much else on, but the excitement and the pressure and the tension, you have to go relieve yourself. So there's a lot of trips to the little boys' room. Jimmy's really feeling the pressure, so he walks into the men's room with not much on, and there's 3 Secret Service guys or something like the Queen's Guards. And they're saying, "What are you doing here?" And Jimmy says, "I'm here to take a leak. I don't know what the hell are you guys doing here."
Before and during the game, the Queen received lots and lots of presents.
There's my sister, Margaret. The children were invited to present a present to the Queen.
With all this stuff that came out in the last couple of years or so about the Queen, and I'd say, well, I knew her. I gave her a present one time. Everybody said, oh yeah.
My father was commissioned by the Terrapin Club of the University of Maryland to make this terrapin pin for the Queen on a visit to the university in 1857. This is Oscar Kaplan & Sons' last store in Baltimore, which was at 314 North Charles Street, between Saratoga and Mulberry Street. I remember when it was being made, and I remember that I think it was the Terrapin Club that he had a friend wrote my father a wonderful letter saying how exciting it had been that he'd made this piece. And so I remember that, and I remember there was a lot of attention to the detail of it as that was being designed and then looked at from by various people from the university. It was a nice memory.
See Philip Goldstein?
I went to the game with my father. My father was Louis L. Goldstein, the controller of the state of Maryland. We were sitting probably 4 or 5 rows behind the Queen, and during the game he gave me a Maryland seal tie clasp, and we walked down to where the Queen was, and I went up to Prince Philip and gave him this tie clasp, and I told him my name was Philip. Oh, he said, "I have a son your age." There was a big furor about it the next day in the papers. It said, "Kid spoils Queen's party."
These arrowheads presented to the Queen by Governor McKeldin were given as a partial payment on an old Maryland debt to the Crown. In 1632, King Charles I required some gold, silver, and 2 Indian arrowheads each year as a repayment for the colony's charter granted to Lord Baltimore. Nice horsey! Nice horsey! This sculpture was presented to the Queen during the game. It's a replica of the drummer horse that was used during her coronation ceremony. There were so many presents given to the Queen that the State Department sent another car to ship the gifts back to the White House. Bottled water is commonplace nowadays, but in 1957, Canada Dry made just 24 crates of 24 bottles of water to commemorate the Queen's visit.
And of course, any time we have parties or cocktail hours, we happen to mention the fact that we have the Queen's water.
When Maxine Phillips moved into her house 40 years ago, the previous owner had accidentally left a crate of this historic water behind, but her children found it first.
Bottles were in the basement when we moved in. The children were in the basement and they found this crate of water and they thought it was ginger ale, and they were opening it and decided it was ginger ale gone bad. But I managed to save a few of the bottles.
In 1957, Al Daniger was the official University of Maryland photographer. Daniger and his assistant were the only photographers to get total access.
There were maybe, wild guess, 150 still photographers there. There are 400 people representing the press. Imagine 400 people at a much smaller university football game.
Every good football team has a mascot, some live animals and some pretend. In 1957, the university had the real thing, a dog like this. And much to the dismay of the university, this mascot proved just how real it was.
But then the dog, doing as dogs do, had to do his thing right in front of the Queen.
Needing to do its business at halftime in front of the Queen was bad enough. Having preserved it on film was worse. But when a Maryland official accidentally sent the picture to the Queen in the official album, well, it was a royal mistake.
He sent the wrong pictures to the Queen and wondered for years why he never got a thank you letter, but I know.
The number of women in the media were fewer than today, but the press corps of over 400 included the largest number of women ever to cover a sporting event. Most of these women were from fashion magazines. They wrote about the Queen's beautiful skin and coral-colored suit. Meanwhile, there was another type of reporter in the crowd that day.
Life magazine had a person watching her who was a lip reader, which I thought was pretty close to an invasion of privacy, even if they were across the stadium. They never mentioned the fact to anyone. I don't think she said anything anybody could do anything with anyhow.
They let the photographers in to take pictures, and next thing you know, I look up, and here's one of my fraternity guys with his little box camera, like he's the Associated Press leading guy, flipping pictures of everybody. So, you know, we got through it. So security wasn't quite what it is, you know, people worry about it today.
But there were Secret Service there were FBI there.
And I guess there was a man for each section, and all they did was stare up and move their head, you know, peruse each way, they keep looking, never turned around. Never looked anything but at the crowd.
There were about a half a dozen people there with long-range rifles. Now I've got some still pictures of the Secret Service staring at me, glaring is a better word, at me, but not too many.
50 years ago at the Queen's game, I was part of Boy Scout Troop 747, and we were ushering at the 50-yard line where the royal party was seated. We had created a patch that was a terrapin patch. So we had them and we wore them at the games. The Scotland Yard and several other police forces, all in suits. One of these guys wanted us out of there. I mean, were we going to go running around and throw popcorn, or you know? I mean, I think there was a little of that checking out going, but we were a pretty active troop. We had done a lot of different activities and took all this kind of responsibilities pretty seriously.
The governor of Maryland, who was a super ham, McKeldin, they named the library after him, Teddy McKeldin, who was a character in his own right. He really was a very extraordinary person. He sat next to the Queen as, if my memory is right, as Elkins did on the side.
Wilson Elkins was an, I think, honorable mention All-American quarterback at Texas. Wilson Elkins was an astute man, very intelligent, and knew his football from A to Z.
But it was Maryland Governor McKeldin and North Carolina Governor Luther Hodges' job to tutor the Queen and the Prince during the game. Governor McKeldin even informed the Queen that Henry VIII once played a version of our rough and tumble sport.
I remember distinctly, we were in the row behind her. People did not get a word in edgewise. So he was leaning in her ear and talking to her the whole game, and he was sitting right next to her.
Governor McKeldin explained how many men were on the field at once and what the numbers on their jerseys meant.
Maryland behind you, wave high the black and gold. Yeah, everything went around the track. Remember that?
I got to be honest with you, they work as hard as the football players.
They do.
When we go to camp, I mean not to camp, but back to campus early in the summer or late in the summer, the only other people there would be the band practicing. Right. And you could hear them all over the campus.
Hey, there's the Terps. There's Bobby Roosevlin. 76, Kurt Schwartz. 52, Victor Schwartz.
12 is Dickie Lewis.
12 is Dickie Lewis, yeah. 62 is Rodney. Yeah, Michael Don Healy. And he was 6'5", and he could do a 2.5 gainer off the high board gracefully.
He was famous because he had been operated on 2 weeks earlier, and he was playing in the game, and we called him Zipper Belly. And because this was unheard of for a guy coming back with an appendectomy.
Gene Alderton and Jack Healy.
Two good people.
Two good people. And Jack Healy was more of a Renaissance guy. You know, he was taking like international relations. And we thought, man, you're a halfback and co-captain. What are you taking international relations? He says, well, after football, there's a lot more life.
Maryland captain Jack Healy felt some political concern before the game. Healy said, "My grandfather, Thomas Hogan, had to leave Ireland because he hauled down the English flag in his town square and burned it. That was in 1907, though. I hope nobody tells the Queen about him."
Alderton, he was a leader, and he had a bad set of teeth, you know.
Why, did he bite you?
No, he had some teeth knocked out, so when he played, he always had that, and all I can remember was like 1 or 2 teeth sticking up and a lot of gums. But then afterwards, he put his false teeth in, he looked fine. He was a smooth dancer, too.
He must have danced with you, too.
No, I watched him dance. He was a smooth dancer, I thought. Hey, look at that football. That's pretty neat.
But this game had more importance to a lot of players and fans because the king of football was on the field.
Anticipation of the Queen being there was what made the game, extra special. The frosting on the cake was, of course, the fact that our old coach was coming back to coach the team that he had coached previously.
I think it was more important that Tatum was coming.
Yeah, that's right. It was more important that Tatum was coming. The Queen was an afterthought.
Yeah, I know.
Well, Jim Tatum was the king of football as far as we were concerned.
It was our first game against our former coach who we idolized, Jim Tatum, who was coaching at North Carolina then.
College coaches were, in those days, they were pretty important to people and to the schools, and Tatum and Bear Bryant, and Wilkinson at Oklahoma.
Tatum had that certain air of confidence that when he spoke, you believed this was going to happen.
He was a showman, he really was.
Whether it be politics or he knew about everything, and he was that type of person.
And you just were busy all the time. He was totally organized.
And he made it playing very simple. And he brought in his T formation, and of course the rest is history.
Jim Tatum's Maryland Terrapins were a powerhouse in the late 1940s and early 50s. There were very few bowl games back then, but Tatum and Maryland usually appeared in one every year. In the 1952 Sugar Bowl, the undefeated Maryland Terrapins played the undefeated University of Tennessee Volunteers.
Tennessee was #1 in the nation because we beat them big time. And that was one of Maryland's greatest games. In fact,
The governor of the state at that time said, this is Maryland's greatest hour.
I didn't get to go to the game, but everybody came back, and it was the talk and conversation in the household for a while about how exciting that victory was.
We won the national championship in '53.
#1 team in the country. Maryland was a powerhouse football team. Jim Tatum, the Maryland football team, the whole country knew about them.
I remember one time Coach Tatum hurt his back, and he had me bring out a folding wooden chair on the field. Well, the players were not supposed, the defensive players were not supposed to tackle the quarterback. Somebody forgot that they weren't supposed to tackle him, and they tackled him and dumped him right in Tatum's lap, and the chair just split into splinters. And he got up and he said, I think my back's better.
Sometimes had a player that served as our sort of babysitter when we needed to go somewhere, and Dad was tied up and couldn't take us. Circus came to town. The big Bob Pellegrini took us to the circus, and he had more fun than we did. He absolutely loved Maryland and loved being there and loved the people that were around. There were some changes in the administration before he left.
They criticized the university for having a disproportionate number of athletic scholarships to student scholarship.
Dr. Elkins had come in and he said to the athletic department, you may continue to give the same number of football scholarships.
It's more of a ceiling. In other words, we didn't grow, and Tatum realized this.
He'd been recruited to Carolina.
I guess they gave him everything he wanted.
And he really felt an obligation to come back to Carolina and do something for his alma mater. So it wasn't as much leaving Maryland as it was coming to Carolina.
And up here with the big city of Washington, D.C., so much competition for ticket sales and so forth with the Redskins. There were people that were very sad to see him go, and some people were mad. They felt like he was deserting us.
And that's when Tommy took over. Tommy was an excellent coach as far as mechanics and so forth are concerned. Tommy Mott was selected as the quarterback for Clark Shaughnessy when Shaughnessy came to Maryland. So Tommy was from Cumberland, good athlete, backup quarterback to Sammy Ball with the Redskins, and a heck of a guy, and my good friend.
Our fourth quarterback, Sammy Ball, is number 33. Dan Sandiford was a defensive halfback from LSU. Dick Pulliam was our great punter from Canisius College, and number 77 is Tom Mott. Well, I was an assistant coach with Jim Tatum there for 5 years, and when he left North Carolina, they chose me, or I was chosen after applying for the job to become the head coach. I think everybody that was knowledgeable in the situation knew that things were not going to be like they were when Coach Tatum was there, but they were expecting a respectable football team, but they didn't expect the number of wins and losses that we had previously.
He believed in perfection. We practiced hours after hours in the summertime.
One thing about Tommy Mott that I remember too was when you did well, you know, in class I'm talking about, not on the field and everything, when he wrote letters home to your parents, saying what a good job you did and everything.
We had some very good players. We had, the first team was pretty good. The lack of depth, we didn't have the depth that Jim had over the years. That's what Tatum fed on, depth.
Tatum especially wanted to win his first time back at Maryland.
There was no question that Carolina was the favorite.
We were all a little frustrated. I remember in the fraternity house, everybody was saying, oh, remember the old days when we used to go to bowl games? Well, most of us had not been there when we went to those bowl games.
We were trying to reestablish the program and Maryland football.
And we had beaten them 36-6 the year before in Chapel Hill.
This was a big stage, and he's a big stage guy, and he was confident that he was going to win the game.
So the game itself, even without the Queen there, would have been a major, major event at school.
In October of 1957, the Queen wasn't the only thing that came to America from overseas. The Asian flu arrived.
We all were sick from the Asian flu. Coach Tatum, he believed that you should practice regardless. And I had to get out of bed every day and go out and practice with a 104-degree temperature. And my buddies who weren't football players, they just could not believe that I was getting up every day and going down and practicing.
In the first half, it was Governor of North Carolina Luther Hodges who had the most to cheer about.
I think the first half was just give and take. You know, it was like I didn't know who was going to win this game, and I didn't feel real good about it because so far we hadn't done real good as a team. That's right, they scored first. They scored first.
And they kept the lead most of the game.
Yeah, most of the game.
They called an interference play on a pass thrown to me, and we couldn't score. I mean, it's one of those things, at that point of our lives, the game was more important than seeing the Queen.
But it wasn't more important to most of these fans. The Queen and Prince Philip were still the center of attention.
We didn't even look at the game, Mama and I. And so we're looking at them, what they ate. The hot dogs came, we had to look at that. Prince Philip, would be wiping his nose with the back of his hand the whole time. So we got a big kick out of that.
At halftime, the Queen found one of Maryland's tricks most intriguing.
Well, I was fortunate enough to be the chairman of the card section, and for the occasion I had prepared several card games, tricks, or exhibitions for the Queen. One was her emblem, E2R. One was the British flag. Then in unison to that we had an American flag. Of course I had the traditional Big M for Maryland.
When the halftime was going on and the card section started to perform tricks with the cards, I leaned forward to put my hand on her shoulder so that I could motion to her to watch the other side of the field. And as I reached forward with my hand, the biggest 6-foot-tall guy with short cropped hair, Secret Service guy, he grabbed me and came down on my shoulder with a bam, and he said, "What are you doing?" And I looked at him, I said, I want to get the Queen Elizabeth to look across the field. We'll take care of it.
Very exciting to know that after we had done it, the Queen had sent word across the field during the halftime that she requested that it be done again for her emblem and the British flag. After which I was asked to meet the Queen and escorted across the field. It was very exciting.
They had to be as English as they can get in a football stadium in College Park, Maryland. At halftime, they had tea time, and they investigated English tea time, I understand, very thoroughly, and they trained a couple of waiters how to serve tea, and it went off just like clockwork.
And in the second half, it went off like clockwork for the Maryland football team.
We had made some big changes defensively, and were able to really keep them from moving the ball successfully throughout most of the game.
Well, I remember one big play we had. We blocked our weak side in like he was blocking down, and we faked over to the right to Bobby Bruce-Seblin, I think, and then the delay pass put us right down into scoring position. I think the quarterback sneaked it in for Bobby Bruce-Seblin.
Phil Perlo had an awesome game.
The key to the game was an interception by Phil Perlo. Perlo was one of those guys that he was a tough kid. He played really hard and played with his heart.
He didn't look like a football player. He looked more like, but he had good speed. He was kind of rotund.
Yeah. Oh, nice catch.
Is that Snake?
Yeah, it's Snake.
Old Schaefer Snake, because Schaefer would release and go downfield like a snake. He's going in and out.
I remember the play, I remember the catch. That sticks in my mind. As far as the particulars of what the situation was on the field at the time, I don't remember that. And I remember myself, as well as many other guys, you run to the newspaper the next day to see what kind of coverage is in there, what pictures are available.
All I can remember, it was just one of those days that you just felt like you had I remember, you know, lead in your shoes, and you just couldn't move, and they had just a running game, and they just ran over us.
Is that Freddie Hamilton?
I was just going to say, it has to be Freddie.
Freddie Hamilton.
Yep.
Yeah.
We worked on a couple of plays that looked like we were going to have a short jump pass over the line of scrimmage, but instead we were pitching out to the halfback, and they started to work.
There goes Gene Verardi.
Verardi.
He was quick. Freeport, Pennsylvania. There's that pass.
One thing that sticks in my mind about the play on the field is the run made by Ted Kirshner. That was one of those crowd stand-up events.
This is it. This is the 81-yard run. He just went right up the middle, cut right, and then he was, you know, and he was quick. He was fast.
Bobby Lehman, all of them were fast.
All of them. They all had good speed.
Except me.
Except for the first 15 yards. You were the fastest for the first 15 yards.
After the Kirshner touchdown, Governor McKeldin turned to the Queen and said, "We've won it." But the Queen pointed to the clock, smiled, and replied, "Not yet. There's still 9 minutes to go."
Jimmy was very well-rounded. He could block good. He could.
I'm still very well-rounded.
There it goes. There it goes. Right through the middle for the touchdown. Woo! That's 6.
I didn't even dance. I'll tell you one thing, if I would have danced after touching my father would have put his foot up my rear end.
That's right. That's right. See how fast you were through the hole? Do you see how fast you were through the hole? You were through that hole before the secondary knew it. You were on him like a shot.
Because I didn't have to go that far.
Coach Mont was almost beside himself with glee over the whole thing, and of course we were all satisfied as far as that's concerned.
Our coach, Tommy Mont, he was carried off on the shoulders after the game.
And brought him across the field. Well, with this, the Secret Service people didn't know what was happening. So they had a little bit of panic as they brought him over to see the Queen.
I weighed about 240 in those days, and they had to hoist me up to get me up, and then of course they carried me over and almost literally threw me in the royal enclosure there. And the Queen, I understood you. You know, we would kid out and practice how we were going to bow just to lighten things up as we met the Queen. But I stuck my hand out and she stuck her hand out. And I understand that's not the protocol. She doesn't shake hands with anybody, but she did. She shook hands. And a lot of the people say she said, wonderful, wonderful. What she really said was splendid, splendid.
I had never saw the guy smile as much as he smiled for days afterwards. And Monday's practice was much easier the following week than it had been for a long time.
Who are they carrying?
I think that's Whitey. Whitey was
they
in the
carrying
first.
all the coaches.
Yeah, I didn't realize that.
Neither did I.
All I remember was Mont being carried. There's Bobby Lehman.
Back to my brother, the Prince yelled, "Hey, 32, good game." He remembers that for the rest of his life also.
To say that was nice enough, and the Queen just smiled and shook her head and shook hands with the co-captains.
As Tommy said later on, and that was my best day in college coaching. And he always had that picture at his home in Greencastle, Indiana, and carrying him over on the shoulder to see the Queen.
I looked at that picture recently, and if you look at the crowd and the people in the stands, how just they're all grinning and everybody just happy that I guess for Maryland and for the team and just to be there on a beautiful afternoon.
It was nice having the Queen there, and with the Queen being there, it brought a lot of press, and we got a big front page article in the Post, you know. And if we beat North Carolina on a normal Saturday, we'd been buried way back in some 23rd page, but it brought it up to the front page, and so, you know, it made us feel like, well, Maryland did good that day.
And 43,000 cheer the Queen, Prince, and victorious Terps.
We did get a lot of publicity.
I did have a date the following week and took a girl to the movies and in Hyattsville, and in those days they used to have the newsreel that came on, and the game did come on the newsreel. I was in the game, so all of a sudden I was her hero. Wasn't my present wife, by the way.
Terps rally shocks Tatum. Upset the Tar Heels. All right.
I can remember we felt like we let Coach Tatum down. All of us look back on it and say, you know, try to forget the game.
I remember a couple of guys after the game wanting to, because a lot of parents had come up for this game because the Queen was there, and some guys wanting to ride back with their parents and their girlfriend, and my dad basically turned to him and said, we didn't win this game, everybody goes back on the bus. Once that day was over, that game was never spoken of in our house again because it was not a victory.
When it was all over, she got in the car and drove around the track and out again before the people in the stands started to move. And they actually stayed where they were supposed to be. Quite amazing.
And when she came by in front of us, we were waving to her and joking that she was certainly waving back to us as individuals. And I remember one guy calling, "Hey, Queenie."
Nick Kavalakides was on the track team, a shot putter, discus thrower, javelin thrower. The day before the game, I just came down with some flu symptoms and wasn't feeling well. And I said, I'm going to miss the game and all of that. And so I came back here to Montgomery Hall. The announcers said they were along about the third period that the Queen and her party were going to leave. And I came out of the dorm just to come out here and sit on the steps because it faces the street, and thought she might come down this way if they were heading back to D.C. And boy, I'm just sitting there watching, and this parade of black cars coming down Chapel Drive. I said, holy cow, here she comes. All of a sudden I see her sitting in the back seat, waved to her, and she waved back, and while I had my audience with the Queen, I missed the Queen's game.
So what does a queen do between an exciting football game and a state dinner? Why, go shopping, of course.
50 years ago, I was a little boy right here at Avondale, Maryland, and when the Queen left Byrd Stadium on her way to a White House reception, she did something she had never done before. She stopped at the Giant food store, a grocery store, for the first time in her life, right here in my neighborhood. And I was standing right here on this corner when the Queen passed by.
The newest grocery store was the Giant grocery store in Queens Chapel. Very large, very state-of-the-art at the time. Huge selections, anything from frozen food to baked goods to fresh produce, etc. Big wide aisles, bright lights.
My name is Don Devanzo. I was the assistant manager of the Giant in Queenstown, Maryland in 1957. That was the day that the Queen of England came and visited our store. Everybody knew that she was going to the University of Maryland that day. But we had no idea before that she was going to come to our store. One of the people that worked in our store as a part-timer was also a district policeman. And at the time she was visiting, he was assigned to the entourage of escorting her on his motorcycle from place to place.
They wanted to see how America works, the stores work, and how the public reacts to them. And I explained to them, after hearing this, that they should go to a food grocery store, because everybody goes to one of them.
That's how they came to the Giant instead of going to Prince George's Plaza.
We knew the Queen was coming, and everybody was really excited in the neighborhood, especially those who graduated from Maryland, because they were going to the game. My dear husband went to get his Maryland sweater. He went on with his friends, and I remained at home. And my two boys got up from their naps, and I hadn't been to the grocery store yet. So I got them all together, and we proceeded to go to the Giant down on Queens Chapel Road.
Prior to her visit, about an hour or hour and a half before, people from the State Department came in and told us that she was coming to the store and that the store had to be secured for her visit.
Did my shopping, was ready to come home to get everybody something to eat. I couldn't get out of the store, and I really didn't know why. They said it was some kind of security they were maintaining there.
My job at the time was to let the Queen and Prince Philip in the front door and to lock the front door immediately after they walked in. If you look very closely at this picture, you will see the tip of a screwdriver in my back pocket. The screwdriver was used to lock the doors, and then you lock the main door with a regular key lock.
And the next thing you know, I hear, they're coming, here they come. And shortly after that, the Queen walks in the door.
We began this tour around the store, and both of them were genuinely interested in what was happening in a supermarket. It was done very well, but she did not hesitate to talk to several of the customers.
She comes, strolls around very, regally, stands there looking around the Giant, and then walks right over to me and my two kids and asks me, "How do you shop here with two children?" And I showed her how. I put the little one into the basket, and she walked right beside me. And my oldest son, I think he was about 4, was taken back to walk with Prince Philip. And we walked up and down the aisles at that Giant. She was particularly interested in the meat case back there.
At that time, we were packaging meat in plastic containers so that a customer could look at both sides of the package. There were not going to be any surprises. She seemed to be very impressed.
As soon as it was over, and she was very lovely, wished me well and told me goodbye.
This is a picture of her watching and talking to customers being checked out. She said, "How much business does this store do?" And I said, "We do around $100,000 a week." And she turned to the prince and said, "Did you hear what he said? $100,000. When they left, I was stunned. You can't believe, as a layperson, how struck you are by something like that happening to you. Your nerves are just unbelievably shot."
I'm at home and he comes home. And of course, when you guys come home, you talk about what happened at the game. And I told him my experience, and he was really mad. And he really was happy about it, I'm sure. Otherwise, he would never have said, "Oh my goodness, let's go out to dinner."
Vivian Moyle kept her composure while meeting the Queen that day, but one shopper didn't. She got so excited in meeting the Queen, she ran home to tell her husband about what she saw, then realized she left her groceries at the store. After the game, 16-year-old Carol Elkins left something behind at the stadium, but not by accident.
As we were driving in the limousine up the back road to the house, I pushed the button down that brought the window down, and I took that beret and frisbeed it out as far as I could. And, I thought, well, that's probably going to get a reaction. Nobody said a word to me. It was like, "It's over. We don't care what you do." Actually, when I got back up to my room, I thought about that. And so I changed my clothes, and after everybody had left and gone home, I went down to the field and I walked around and I couldn't find it. So I really, to this day, wish I had, well, of course I wish I had kept it.
I was 19, Howard. I was a child. Big deal. I was 21.
Howard Miller and Lynn Needle have remained friends all these years, but Howard was almost left out of his place in history.
Well, I did a book for our grandchildren. It's called Grandma Remembers. I don't know why I cropped Howard out of a picture. This is where Howard should be.
But I never cropped her out of my picture.
But I felt bad. As the years went on, I did feel badly about that. So
Because I caught her.
Yeah, he saw it hanging in my house. He said, I think a piece of your picture, of our picture, is missing. And I said, Howard, you know what? I really wasn't aware. So I'm going to replace that picture with one with all of us. Isn't that the best? It's like history repeating. Uh-oh.
It may have been Tommy Mott's best day as a college football coach, but after all these years, Tommy Mott remembers those who were left out of this historic day because of their sacrifice for the United States and the Queen's beloved England.
That game wasn't too far removed from World War II. And I thought about that game, and I thought about, Maryland athletes. A lot of my teammates had given their lives in World War II. And I had hoped that, I know that if they'd been alive, they'd been there that day. And a lot of the sons of Maryland had gone off to war and didn't come back, and I know they would have been with us in spirit and to share in that great moment. And I still remember those fellas, and I'm sure everybody does, at least they should. But then as I've been looking at these fellas, the people that really played the role in the game, I look at them in the flower of their youth, and I just say, gee, how lucky you are, Tom Mott, to have been associated with these young guys like this, and these fine players, and look at them in the flower of their youth. And we share this moment in history, this great game that it's lived 50 years and maybe 100 years from now to still be remembered. And so it was a great afternoon.